So caramel edge, guys, this principle that I'm going to show you now, it acts like on tables, like on paintings, like a dish. That is, everything is the same. The only nuance is here we will have to work a little more on the ends and grinding, which should not be done in paintings, and though it depends on what kind of paintings, but in a dish you definitely do not need to do this. Look, what does caramel land mean? Caramel land. Imagine a candy or a lollipop. She has streamlined, tasty, smooth all the edges. But in order to achieve this in resin, the most important obstacle for us, in addition to what resin should be, what grinding, the most important obstacle is a sharp edge, a sharp end. That is, even when you paint at the initial stage, you already take a canvas, you take a stretcher, clean the edges, slightly smooth it so that the resin can spread and catch on these edges to keep your surface going down. This is most relevant on tables because there are table ends, very tasty and wide, especially with dried flowers. It's generally the most ideal. In my opinion, you can also polish. The principle is similar. We are grinding to coating. With resin, finish, caramel edge, we lay the resin, and then you can polish the table. That is, in principle, as you just take a few steps for yourself. Ease before and after the finish polishing, that is, you can also polish. But now the story is about the caramel edge, which you can apply to any of your products for a picture, a panel, a watch, anything that you want. So we remove the sharp edge. Further on grinding, it also applies to the paintings of the dishes. We must necessarily grind the surface, necessarily level it, and necessarily grind it. It should have a grain. If for pictures, you can take the two sheets, a grinding sheet, for example, there are 320 and 380 to 400. That is, you should fit in your head that we are grinding to the finish line up to 400 in the grinding of the tabletop. And of course, we have from the lowest grain. And well, it all depends on how much you have. The surface is damaged. How much formwork did you use? I fish. From 80 grains to 400, I transfer it in steps. Now that we have our own machine, yes, a grinding machine. Look, at the stage of choosing discs, grinding discs, you must first of all carefully approach the choice of wheels. Do not save on this. You will spend more money, effort, and moral nerves. When you save your low-quality grains, look, they consist of fine grainy sprays, square centimeter. That's what, and less often or more grains per square centimeter. It's called grita. These are the grites we have to increase by a square centimeter in steps. Each time polishing, as it turns out polishing, we are from large grains. Let's move on to the smallest one already, in that which puts the disc into the plush velour felt. It's in the polishing paste. That's the way the polishing takes place. There's no such thing as magic tablets that will give us such results. The polishing. And if you hear about the courses that I'd sell on how to perfectly polish, I would simply show you how to transition the discs step by step. And of course, I will describe the nuances for a good, tasty, beautiful, clear polish to be without any unnecessary scratches, without any extra lamps. Lamps, that's genuinely bothersome. When we select grains, we carefully pick through them by hand, scrutinizing each disc. If it is from a high-quality brand, yes, there will naturally be faults. Sometimes there are faults even with high-quality brands. However, as a rule, everything is relative to the price. And we check our discs manually, observing what's happening. Why do we do this? If you have a cheap disc, these grains that are sprayed here, yes, the grains chip away when our machine starts moving on its own. It tears off when our machine goes along its trajectory. The torn grain also begins to create its own pattern, but only much deeper because it's under the sheet, under the emery sheet. And as a result, more scratches appear, which should not be with this grain and which won't be removed with the next finer grain. Understandably, that is, at the stage of disc selection, it's very important. You should choose your discs carefully. Then after each disc, now I will go through the 80th disc, clean the surface well. That is, the same thing happens. If you do not remove the dust after each disc, then this dust also creates extra scratches that are not removed by the next grain, That is, I have the 80th, the next one will be the 100th. The 100th should only remove and smooth out what the 80th did. It can't remove what a larger grain that fell underneath you did. That is, you have to understand this. On your table, when you are working at sanding before coating with a finish or covering with a parallel edge, you must hold the discs in steps, those that you will use. Here is my collection. You should have napkins. Wet, dry with acetone, with solvent, any. The main thing is that they clean well. You must have a machine, of course, and a brush with which I clean the disc after sanding. That is, we also need to sand and clean the disc before moving on to further sanding. That is, if you see that the disc is clogging, stop, clean everything off cleanly, and continue sanding. So if this principle also works with sheet sandpaper, if for those who don't have a machine, you do the same. You buy sheets, you get them step by step. The process takes longer, that's for sure. I highly recommend getting a machine if you intend to work for a long term and not just create countertops, but also make paintings. Sanding is basically suitable for a small coaster. As soon as you feel the smoothness of the sanding on the countertop, on the painting, on the coaster, you will realize the gap between just covering the coaster with a finish and a finish that is sanded to perfection or polished or coated with a MAC. It's a completely different texture, it's a completely different story altogether, and you must make your customer fall not only in love with the design, but also with this tactility. That is, resin products are certainly beautiful in photos, but they don't convey even 50% of their tactility and depth. You need to convey that through touch as well. When your customer touches your coaster, your dishes, your watch, your table, they will order a bunch more from you. So where do we start? We start with the 80 disc. Now I am going over the entire surface. For now, going over the side beads. Note my movements. My movements are horizontal, clear on the surface as my vibrating machine goes. Then I also position it exactly to the side. I use the nozzle not flat out, like so with the entire disc. Firstly, the vibrating machine's design allows it to move in not only a circular motion, but also vibrate a bit. It vibrates, and if you use it flat, the machine and your hand will have a shaking motion that could tire you out. However, if you angle it like this, applying a bit of pressure with the nozzle, it provides a better grip, and the disc operates more directly and removes the debris more efficiently. The whole edge is leveled. But when we are working with the caramel edge, we clean our countertop, making it level, and we polish our edge, it also becomes level. You'll get virtually, well, you have a 90-degree angle.
It's level.
We do not require this angle here, yes. So the third step is to clean our machine. After processing the edges, we are now smoothing the edge with our machine. As shown, you can simply lay it on its side and roll along our edge line or carefully follow these movements, swings and lead. Our machine all over the edge, you do as you can. Because the swing isn't always perfect, this doesn't always turn out perfectly. I occasionally hold it like this, maintain my machine and hold my circle. I start to wheel it. Yes, wheel the tabletop itself relative to mine. Try different ways. The important thing, of course, is not to apply too much pressure, because you have to ensure everything is equal, should also be the same, and the height of the smoothing angle must be the same over the entire surface. Let's go. So take a napkin, wipe it off, guys. Now everything is the same that we went through with the 80th disc or with the one you started with. We repeat the exact same steps up to grain 320, or ideally 400, but 320 will suffice for covering with medium resin, medium viscosity. Everything remains the same. We go through all the discs, the top part, the ends, smoothing. No, don't be lazy, don't skip the steps, because it will all manifest on the flip side, well, the appearance of the marks. Don't be lazy to remove the dust, and don't rush. Take everything step by step, and let's move on to the finish coating. Guys, when we got to the 320 disc, well done. Then went on to the 400 in general, a Smart 5. We take a remover, a solvent, a liquid for nail polish remover, acetone, and the most delicious and my favorite, we remove all dust. At this stage, some bubbles may open up. Dust might be stuck in there from the sanding. Cracks might appear. Look, if crack bubbles appear, clean the bubbles with a toothpick. In the same acetone, you can clean it with water, then dry it. If you have an opened crack, I take as I act. I take UV resin. I have a small manicure machine. If there's a Dremel, take dentist's attachments and buy these small nozzles with not strong holes, not strong notches, not with deep ones, because wood resin and wood get really stuck. We drill our crevices, pour UV resin in there, dry and grind, that is at the sanding stage. You'll see everything, preparing to apply the finish. Look. We have several ways of developing events here. We've sanded the front side. If you have your back side is very dirty, then it needs to be sanded. Remove excess leaves and also cover any small one, art, anyone. If you have a normal one, pour to the top, up to the volume as it should be, like mine, then we can cover it with latex. Or I've observed a lot of Europeans, artists who cover it with glue for office use. It's called like this, but I didn't find such. That's why I use regular office glue that I bought. PVA glue. I have construction and office ones. I will try an office one. In 2 layers, you need to apply a thick layer in general. That some artists do differently. Some apply a very thick layer and leave it to dry for several hours. I will apply one like this. The left one is office, I'll apply it. Oh, the left is construction one, and the one I have in my hands is office. I'll apply 2 thin layers, the first layer now, And as it dries, the first layer, I'll apply the second layer. What this layer does, when we're going to apply the caramel edge on top, naturally the drops will flow down the sides, and to avoid having to regrind this surface, if you've done it well and don't want to have to cover it again, you need to protect it. You can use latex, you can tape everything up, or you can apply several layers of glue like this. When the drops fall, it hardens like a film. You just tear it off, and it tears off together with the drops that remain from the finish. So now I'm applying it, I leave it to dry well, then I flip it over, knead it. Right now at this stage when I apply the glue, I'm going to stir the resin. I'll do it, guys. You also have a choice. You can make the finished medium thick or in principle as liquid, but liquid is the most brittle. I don't recommend, and I will make the finish with the same resin, not construction, but for three-dimensional fillings. So that is, I'm going to do the finishing coating with the same resin I used to make this table, but I'll cheat, I'll add a little more hardener, and my resin in 4 to 5 hours will already start to polymerize. Because as we all know, resin for three-dimensional fillings polymerizes longer than artistic resin, and I have to wait. And I'm going to create a caramel edge so you can watch and decide for yourself how you want it. Maybe you want it medium. If that's the case, we wait for the PVA glue to fully dry before we mix the resin, be it medium or thick. So, guys, I already have the resin mixed up. Now, how do we create the caramel edge? We can allow the resin to thicken up a bit before pouring it out immediately. Creating a tape wrap is a safer option. Grab some masking or reinforced tape, but not the regular kind. The regular tape won't stick. I have formwork tape. Tape it up, guys, to ensure it's easy to remove later, but also well adhered. The tape should naturally stick well. Give about a ½ centimeter edge. I'm applying it with a stretch. Why do we need this edge? That's because we're going to fill it up with resin and we don't want it to run down instantly. Make sure to cover the edges thoroughly and let the tape adhere properly to avoid any leakage and stop the resin from running off immediately. Down and gained a little viscosity only after a certain time. When we already understand that it is ready, go down, we will lower it to our ends. Look carefully at the tabletop if you have removed everything. Is everything fine everywhere for us to spill our pitch now? I mixed the same resin, which poured the countertop. So now I'm going to pour it out little by little. You see, I divided it into a few cups so that it does not polymerize faster. I pour it into the center of a thick puddle. And the guys, to know how much resin we need of our work, there is a calculator for resin consumption. Art resin, the calculator is very close to exact. So I advise you to use it when you calculate your consumption, as on, add a little bit more, I would say about 10 grams. So the resin can still disperse calmly to the ends. It has now settled on the ends, and it's very good. Let it be like this for about an hour. I have it here. Let me remind you again, guys. I have resin for volumetric fillings. I added a little more hardener to it. It's a trick. And thus, my resin will harden faster than 2 days, but it will certainly take a day to harden, and it will begin to thicken and polymerize after about 3 to 4 hours. But to conduct such experiments, you must also experiment beforehand. So please, before accelerating your resin like this, you must understand it, know its lifespan, know how long it will take to harden before you can do tricks with it. In the same way, you can create thick or medium resin, But the main precondition for the finish is that the resin must be mature and lifeless. Yet many students make the mistake of insisting on pouring the resin into the mold as soon as it's ready. But it's already thickened and polymerizing. As soon as you pour it out, it will, when the resin touches something, there'll be a bunch of bubbles. So we give it, we stir the resin, let it sit right there. If we're talking about an artistic resin, we give it literally 10 minutes to settle, then wrap it in tape and pour. We wait right here and check the viscosity of the tar with a toothpick. When it stretches like honey, we remove the tape and it spreads over all our edges. We help with our hands, a burner, a hairdryer, whatever you have, we remove the tape, the resin will spread, and it gives us a caramel edge. That's where the secret lies, but choose the right resin. I generally wait before removing it. So, guys, the most anticipated moment, we remove the tape. I need to shoot this part from another angle. Wait, here is the tasty bit. Let the resin spread. If needed, help it with your hands. Help it spread. While the resin is still malleable, we spread it along all our edges. Let it polymerize. It's not complicated. That's how you learned another little secret today. I'd be happy to see all your sweet caramel edges. There's more useful stuff in my training. Have a great creative day. No contaminants, no dust particles, warm weather, no drafts, all the best.